Coming up on Market to Market, the Senate passes a significant milestone on the road to the next farm bill. And too many people vying for too little water results in big problems in the nation's salad bowl. Those stories and market analysis with Walt Hackney and Virgil Robinson next.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by Pioneer Hybrid, which supports efforts to help families pass their farms into the hands of the next generation. Pioneer, science with service, delivering success.
This is the Friday, June 22 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Dean Borg. One day after racking up some of their worst losses of the year, equity and commodity markets rallied on Friday on news that leaders in Germany, France, Italy, and Spain will be pushing for a $163 billion growth package. Bank stocks were the strongest industry group among the 10 tracked by the S&P 500 index, but only two sectors actually fell. The gains were modest but widespread as only 2 of the 30 stocks in the Dow Jones Industrials actually declined. Developments in Europe late this week were friendly to commodity prices as well. Despite losing ground on a weekly basis, crude oil rallied 2.5% to $80 a barrel. That was on Friday, in the wake of a 2-day drop that pushed the world's most heavily traded commodity to an 8-month low. And the national average price for a gallon of unleaded gasoline declined this week to $3.45 a gallon. That's nearly 50 cents less a gallon than in April, that was the April high, and about 14 cents cheaper than the same week last year. Improving fiscal prospects in Europe also supported U.S. grain and oilseed markets. And while Mother Nature currently wields the most influence over prices, the U.S. Senate also passed a significant milestone on the road to the next farm bill.
On this vote, the yeas are 64, the nays are 35. The 60-vote threshold having been achieved, the bill is passed.
The U.S. Senate approved its version of a 5-year, $500 billion farm bill Thursday, cutting agricultural subsidies and land conservation spending by about $2 billion each year. As expected, the bill would eliminate direct payments to farmers. The fate of those payments, which amount to about $5 billion a year, has virtually been assured for months because of the cavernous federal deficit. But the measure would largely protect some 46 million citizens relying on the Supplemental Food Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. Sugar producers would also be spared from much of the fiscal carnage. A federal program controlling sugar supplies, setting prices, and limiting imports has long been a target of those who say the government supports agribusiness over the interests of consumers. Lawmakers tacked 73 amendments to the bill, but other more controversial modifications failed to win approval. They included language that would have stopped aerial inspections of agricultural operations by the EPA, and an amendment allowing states to require clear labels on any food or beverage containing genetically engineered ingredients. Senate leaders considered the Farm Bill's approval a major victory because of its bipartisan tone and, more importantly, this election year, because of the legislation's considerable savings, which are estimated at more than $24 billion over the next decade.
This is a good bill. Is it the best possible bill? No, it is the best bill possible.
While the Food, Farm, and Jobs bill would eliminate direct payments, crop insurance now is expected to play a greater role in the safety net for farmers. 3/4 of the bill's spending is devoted to nutrition programs to assist children and the poor. In the wake of the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, nutrition assistance spending has exploded and could amount to $97 billion per year over the next decade.
Agriculture is one of the few parts of our economy where we're running a trade surplus, and that we need to recognize that that's also a job creator. The men and women who work hard from sunrise to sunset to give us the bounty of safe, nutritious food that we put on our tables today, they deserve the certainty of this bill.
The focus now shifts to the other chamber of Congress, where the fate of the Farm Bill is less certain. The House version of the measure still has not emerged from committee, but fiscal hawks are expected to seek deeper cuts in many areas, including food assistance. An Israeli scientist credited with developing drip irrigation methods that conserve water while allowing food to be grown in some of the world's driest climates was named the winner of the year's World Food Prize. Daniel Hillel's micro-irrigation methods have revolutionized agricultural practices in more than 30 countries over the past 50 to 60 years. Commenting on Hillel's selection, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton spoke of the importance of getting the most out of every drop of water, especially in the regions of the world where the precious resource is too unpredictable to sustain an American style of agriculture. In California, where agriculture has an annual economic impact of nearly $40 billion, farmers depend heavily on the water traveling hundreds of miles to irrigate crops. But as David Miller explains, too many people vying for too little water is resulting in big problems in the nation's salad bowl.
Every year, approximately 7.4 million acre-feet of water, about 2.4 trillion gallons, flows from the Sierra Nevada mountains through various canals and waterways into California's Central Valley. While some is diverted to urban areas, nearly 70% gives life to fruits and vegetables that eventually make it to tables across the United States. Farmers in the Central Valley, a region 40 miles wide and more than 400 miles long, rely on the constant flow of water to make a living. But in 2009, the mountain snowpack was 60% below normal. As water levels fell, provisions in the Federal Endangered Species Act were set in motion to protect native salmon and Delta smelt. Water from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta was restricted, and fewer acres were planted in the San Joaquin Valley below. Thousands of agricultural workers lost their jobs, and unemployment soared over 40% in some communities. Growers across the Central Valley lost billions in revenue, all in the hopes of saving the 3-inch-long Delta smelt.
The way I see the Endangered Species Act, I see a law that was well-intended to help the ecosystems, and that's fine. But the Endangered Species Act has no consideration for human impact. So if it puts me out of business to save the Delta smelt, the Endangered Species Act doesn't care. It only wants to save the species at any cost. And there's something wrong with that.
Joe Del Bosque is a second-generation farmer from Fireball, California in the San Joaquin Valley. Del Bosque idled more than a third of his 2,200 acres during the drought, diverting precious water from vine-ripened fruits and vegetables to his fruit and nut trees.
We've had those cutbacks for 20 years here in agriculture, so we understand them, and we've kind of learned to roll with the punches. It's not easy. If we had 2009 again in 2010, I may not be standing here because we could roll through 1 year but not through 2.
Even before the drought of 2009, a coalition of California growers and agricultural workers realized a fight over water rights was brewing and formed the Latino Water Coalition. Ultimately, the group played an integral role in getting a measure through the California legislature to improve the Golden State's aging water infrastructure. Manuel Cunha is president of the Nisei Farmers League, a farmer advocacy group based in the San Joaquin Valley. The Nisei Farmers League is a member of the coalition.
If you don't start now, it's going to take 10 to 12 years to do CEQA review and EIRs and environmental impact reports and lawsuits and everything else that goes along with that. But I would hope that other states realize that they can get out in front of this thing ahead with their states rather than waiting until the catastrophes that are occurring in this state. This is the 900-pound gorilla, and we are continually procrastinating because of politics.
In 2009, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger approved a $14.1 billion measure that included provisions to repair, improve, and expand California's canals and reservoirs. Known as the Water Bond, the legislation was set to go on the 2010 ballot for approval by the people of California. But lackluster support and an operating budget of over $1 trillion found the governor asking for a delay until 2012. Over the following 2 years, water levels rebounded, but flow restrictions remained, and interest by those living in the urban regions of the state waned. Currently, reservoirs in California are at 110% of normal capacity, but a great deal of the water will never reach California farm fields due to the increased numbers of endangered fish near pumping station intakes. And even if the water were to make it downstream, capacity issues would prevent long-term storage. The higher levels were of no help to those valley farmers who have seen their water allotments slashed by as much as 90%. While more water was made available last April, it was too little, too late.
You know, we make our plans in the fall, like in November. You know, we are actually preparing to plant in the spring by February or March. We didn't get our first allocation till I think it was almost April.
There is an underlying unity that we all have because we're all Californians. We're all part of a community.
California Governor Jerry Brown stated to farmers in January he was in favor of dropping the water bond from the ballot to focus on state income and sales tax issues. Despite the political hint, the California legislature has chosen to leave the bond on the ballot. According to spokesman for Speaker of the California Assembly John Perez, the water bond will remain on the ballot, and Assembly leadership is consulting with the governor on how to proceed. Despite numerous requests by Market to Market, Governor Brown refused to comment on the issue. A poll by the nonpartisan think tank Public Policy Institute of California found 51% of Californians are in favor of the water bond, while 34% oppose the measure.
We know what it's like when they turn the tap off to us. People in Los Angeles and San Diego have never had the tap turned off. The day that happens, or the day that they open it and a little dribble comes out, it's going to be a disaster. They will say, what happened? Why didn't somebody do something about this? But these things don't happen overnight. If we pass the bond this year, $11.3 or $4 billion, it would still take 15 or 20 years before we could get the infrastructure built to improve our water system to have more reliable water supply. People need to think about that.
Even if water allocations return to 100%, getting the fruits and vegetables out of the field remains a problem for Central Valley farmers. As immigration regulations have been tightened over the past few years, the number of people willing to pick, process, and pack fruits and vegetables has declined. Next week, Market to Market will examine the impact of immigration reform on California farmers. For Market to Market, I'm David Miller.
Next, the Market to Market report.
Grain markets trended higher this past week on weather concerns and prospects for increased demand. For the week, July wheat gained 64 cents, while the nearby corn contract moved 12 cents lower. Soybeans also rallied this week as the July contract posted a weekly gain of 67 cents, while nearby meal prices gained nearly $12 a ton. In the softs, cotton bucking the bullish trend as the December contract settled Friday with a weekly loss of $1.90 a hundredweight. In the dairy market, July Class 3 milk futures gained 43 cents, while the August contract moved 53 cents higher. Livestock prices were mixed this past week. The August fed cattle contract gaining 25 cents. Nearby feeders were off nearly 3 1/4. And the August lean hog contract gained 17 cents. In the currency markets, the euro lost 83 basis points against the dollar. Despite rallying back above the $80 mark on Friday, crude oil settled with a weekly loss of $4.30 a barrel. COMEX gold proved to be no safe haven as the August contract fell more than $60 an ounce. And the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index lost more than 15 points to settle at 565.25. Now, here to lend us their insight on these trends and other trends are two of our regular market analysts, Walt Hackney and Virgil Robinson.
Hi. Hello, Dean.
Hi. I said right off that it's a weather market, but also concerns about demand also pushing higher. What's the bigger factor here, weather?
Well, you've kind of defined two elements of the market, Dean. One, demand, and regarding demand, old crop demand has weakened of late Export sales have been relatively poor. Ethanol economics aren't particularly good, as documented by one of the larger plants going dark and several others reducing capacities. So old crop demand has certainly waned of late, while new crop, at least as measured by the new crop corn futures contract, traded about 50 cents higher this week.
What's the reason for the ethanol problems?
Unprofitable. Can't cover variable costs at this point.
Because oil prices are dropping?
To some extent, and I think in many regions it's just terribly difficult to source corn. Those who are in areas of concern weather-wise and still possess old crop corn are not willing to part with that at this point, using that old crop as kind of a hedge should their new crop fall short of expectations.
I know the wheat crop is being harvested earlier than usual. What about the wheat market?
A couple of things there. In the recent WASDE report, for the third consecutive time, the department reduced world wheat production. Concerns in parts of Russia, the Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and other wheat exporting regions. They're projecting this year a carryover in this particular crop year of about 185 million metric tons, which is the smallest in the last 4 or 5. That's a year-over-year decline, inventory-wise, of about 5%. So that clearly has underpinned the value of wheat.
Corn.
A couple things, as mentioned.
Drought.
Yeah, that's one of them, certainly the concern about weather east of the Mississippi in particular.
Yes.
The crop conditions report, and I would warn folks that the correlation between crop conditions and final yield this early on are not particularly strong. Clearly, they could improve. By that I mean crop conditions with timely rain. But to this point, there's a growing concern about the state of the crop, particularly in parts of Illinois, Indiana, and other southeastern regions.
How should that be influencing people who have corn to sell?
Well, if it's new crop corn and they have not sold what they intended to sell by market plan, I think this is providing an opportunity. As mentioned, new crop corn futures this week were sharply higher. To those who are technicians, and I profess to at least be somewhat knowledgeable of the technical behavior of a marketplace, I sense a breakout in that futures contract, which gives me a count up towards 585.
Well,
Virgil, your point is has become a great problem for the cattle feeding industry and to a certain extent the hog production industry. And that is the uncertainty of this corn and the availability of the corn in the deferred months as we go ahead for a feedlot or a hog operation to secure their costs of production. How do you address that?
You know, Walt, I think in the western part of the Corn Belt, and I'm kind of using that as a catch-all here regarding feedlot operations and the larger feedlot operations, their prospect at present appears to be pretty good. And I think the availability of cash corn, at least as we know the prospect today, is pretty strong, Walt. So if anything, I would be looking at the cash market, Walt, rather than the futures market, particularly if they can lay in those feeders or those replacements and calculate or pencil any kind of a hedge 4 or 5 months down the road.
Are you suggesting a futures contract hedge or an option type hedge?
You know, I think again in this instance, Walt, trying to geographically define our subject here, the western part of the Corn Belt, I'd look towards that cash procurement before I would the futures contract.
Okay.
Is this also a time to be locking in fall harvest soybeans for selling?
Good question. There again, new crop soybean futures traded within a couple of cents of contract highs this week, primarily based on weather concerns, Dean, given the fact that supplies of old crop here in the U.S. as well as in the southern hemisphere are tight, projected to be tight. it's pretty important that we grow a large crop of beans here in the U.S. And again, there are some concerns primarily evolving around weather.
What are you advising? If you had soybeans in the ground now, but you haven't harvested them yet, is this the time to contract for fall?
You know, I think I'd defer finalizing the price, but rather use a minimum price where you in fact either sell the cash because your new crop harvest basis is unseasonably strong, and then buy and replace that with a call option, or vice versa. If the new crop basis is poor, I'd buy the put and await a tightening of the basis. But I don't think right now I'd finalize the price of new crop soybeans if I'd done nothing to this point.
What about the cotton market?
Here again, you know, world cotton stocks are projected year over year to grow about 10%. And that kind of defines the supply scenario.
Yeah.
It's currently perceived to be quite adequate. Rallies based on weather concerns here in the U.S., for example, or China, or Brazil, or Egypt, I think are opportunities to go ahead and make some kind of commitment to the cash cotton market.
Walt, you had a major cattle report out on Friday.
We did. The Cattle on Feed report, the USDA report, it was fairly well anticipated.
Didn't surprise you then?
Not exactly, except in the marketing. The marketing was only 1% over a year ago in May. We were, as an industry, anticipating maybe 5% extra marketing, which would have helped in regard to a Cattle on Feed report that was suggestively bearish. They come out with the on-feed numbers a couple percent over a year ago. That was manageable. But they came back with 15% extra placements in May over a year ago.
More cattle than you had anticipated.
Yeah, and yes, but the problem with that is we were thinking it could be 14%. It was 15, which is understandable, but they never really came out and explained why. And the basic reason is, a year ago in May, we had just went through a huge liquidation of cattle in the Southwest due to the historic drought.
Yeah.
They all moved out earlier than May. So May, in the Cattle on Feed report a year ago, didn't show hardly any placements at all.
Is the demand there to take care of it?
There's a phenomenal demand for feeder cattle, but the demand for beef, the demand of the cattle feeding industry to buy these feeder replacement cattle at these current prices is very questionable. And yesterday is a good example, Dean. We lost $4 to $6 in the live cattle market in the feedlot basis, the cash cattle.
Yeah, and packers were bidding down cattle, and cattle feeders were selling them, though.
Cattle feeders had been pricing at $1.20 to $1.22, and that would be from West Texas to Illinois. $1.95 dressed was a normal asking price all week long. Yesterday, the packer came out bidding $1.14, giving some indication he might give $15.
Yeah.
Everyone sat back and said there'll be no cattle sold. Fact is, by last night, the majority of this week's show list were sold at those packer bids, and that shocked the industry.
So what do you expect in the coming week? Are there some cattle that can be held in feedlots because they aren't at market weight yet?
We're a little bit light on carcass weights, which is indicative of a very current feedlot supply.
Yeah.
It also shows that the cattle feeder has done a good job of marketing and has kept his weight down. But if the cattle feeder next week decides to resist markets like 14 to 16 the cash, $1.14 to $1.16 on his cattle, or $1.88 dressed instead of in the 90s, that could come back to haunt the cattle feeder because of extra weight he's putting on.
What about the hog market? Does that look iffy too?
The hog market may have worn out its welcome just a little bit.
That's what I was wondering.
Since May 1, Dean, we have gained 25% in the value of the primal cutout value of pork, while the wholesale market at the supermarket has only gained 5%. And that's kind of a bad thing for the retailer to absorb, and he's probably not going to.
You had a question?
I did. This is kind of geographically specific, Walt, but I know that Missouri has experienced abnormally dry conditions and in some select areas, droughty-like conditions. Are you seeing any significant liquidation of the herd in that area?
There is a small amount of cow liquidation off of southern Missouri grass country. Now that liquidation may be that they're selling in the auction system and getting rid of a few of the older cows, or they're moving them into areas where they can secure some decent grass pasture.
Walt, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks, gentlemen, for your comments and insight. Walt Hackney, Virgil Robinson. Well, that wraps up this edition of Market to Market, but if you'd like more information from Walt and Virgil on where these volatile markets may be headed, visit our Market Plus page at our website. You'll find expanded market analysis, audio podcast, streaming video of the program, and links to our Twitter feed and Facebook page. It's all free at the Market to Market website. And many of you have posted comments on those sites too in recent days expressing your sentiments on the passing of Mark Pearson. Thank you very much for that support. We want you to know that Market to Market will be naming a successor in the weeks ahead, and the new host will be rooted in the same tradition as Mark and Chet Randolph before him. We believe that viewers will be pleased. So until next week, thanks for watching. I'm Dean Borg, and have a good week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by Pioneer Hybrid, which supports efforts to help families pass their farms into the hands of the next generation. Pioneer, science with service, delivering success.